Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Elevated Beauty Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Fouts, and today's episode is going to be about prioritizing your time and how to find your creative space. This is an episode I've really been looking forward to recording. It was inspired by a book that I recently read called Unicorn Space by Eve Rodsky, and it honestly helped me a lot. I've always been a very creative person, and I have recognized before reading this that it really helped me to carve out time for my creative space because it just helped me to regulate and just put me more at ease. But after reading this book, I kind of realized why creative space, no matter what that looks like for you, is so important. And not only that, but the things that Eve Rodsky put in the book, the tools that she provided and insight that she offered really helped me to better prioritize my time. And I think that's something that everyone needs help in. I see it all the time with my clients. I struggled with it. So I kind of want to give you guys some of the tools that I learned from her, and then just a little bit of my input on the topic as well. Especially as a business owner, a wife, and a mother, this has helped me so much to prioritize my time. So first, what we're going to get into is some questions that you can ask yourself to kind of get to know yourself better and kind of like understand where you're at. So these are some questions from the book that helped me. So the first question is, who am I now? And I wrote down, I am a creative mind, a dreamer, someone trying to achieve her goals, and someone who prioritizes family but values herself also. So I already recognize that I'm a person who likes to be creative. I like to dream. I like to set out goals for myself, and family is really important to me, but I already recognize that creativity is something that I need. So you can describe yourself however you want, and I think this kind of gives us an idea of what is important to us by answering the question, who am I now? And the second question is, what do I like about this version of myself? So the current version of myself, I like that I have cemented aspirations and I'm working to make them a reality. And this lets you know kind of what practices you're already doing with this current version of yourself. And it's good not to just point out the negatives, but, so I do like that I have aspirations and I'm actively working to make them a goal of mine. And then you can ask, what do you not like? I personally don't like that sometimes I get stagnant and don't do the things I want to do with the time that I have. So that's something that I've recently changed, but that helps you realize what things that you might want to change. And I was just getting caught up in the routine of daily life, and I was having all these ideas and things and plans that I wanted to do, but on the weekends I was just sitting at home and not doing anything. A little bit of laziness, not being productive, not doing anything to actively reach those goals. So that's something that I wanted to change. I wanted to get out of that routine that for some reason I had set for myself, that on the weekends we just sit at home. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I am kind of a homebody, but I also like to go out on nature walks. I like to do little things with my family, and I don't want to sit at home all day on the weekends and clean or watch TV. Like, that's boring, and to me, that's not living life. So I wanted to live more life, basically. So that's what I do not like about the current version of myself. And another question you can ask yourself is, who did I used to be? And this was important is important and helpful to me because it allowed me to recognize, even though there was something that I did not like about my current self, I used to be someone else, and I have come a good way since then. So I answered this question, who did I used to be with? I used to be someone that was afraid to get uncomfortable. And probably in the past 2 years, I have overcome that hurdle because I was letting anxiety rule my life. And I realized that growth and comfort do not coexist. And I really wanted to grow as a person. I wanted to grow into the space that I am now as a business owner. And so I'm not that person anymore. So I was really happy with that answer. And I hope you guys have a notebook because, answering these questions for yourself, I found them to be pretty helpful. So I have 5 more questions. Who had I always imagined myself becoming? I said someone who achieved their goals and had a sense of safety and peace. That's what I always imagined myself becoming. That's what I wanted, and that's still what I want. I have goals, and I am working to achieve them, and I have achieved some of them already. And a sense of safety and peace are really important to me. I think just from childhood, we have things that kind of formed our opinions and formed the way we go about life. So maybe for some reason I didn't feel a sense of safety and peace growing up. And so that's something that I really try hard to do in my adult life. And I do feel at peace and I feel pretty safe. So that kind of tells me that I am becoming the person that I imagined. So depending on what your answer is, you can kind of see where you're at in that path. So the next question is, in what ways have I stopped myself from becoming me? And old me was by making excuses and being afraid to make the jump. So once I stopped being afraid and realized that I was limiting myself and I was not allowing myself to grow because I was afraid of getting uncomfortable, after I moved past that hurdle, I was able to become me. So I do not allow that to stop myself anymore, but that is a way that I used to stop myself. So by answering this question, you can kind of recognize the patterns where you potentially hold yourself back. What are the cultural expectations that have prevented me from pursuing what makes me feel most alive? And I said being hungry for my career and being too bold. So I'm from the South, I'm from Louisiana, and culturally, in the South there, still I feel like there's not a lot of progression as there is in the rest of the United States. So there are many women that, and obviously I'm not trying to generalize everybody, but for a big part, there are a lot of women that are not really go-getters when it comes to a career. They're like stay-at-home moms and they raise a family. So that cultural expectation of being a good wife, making a happy home for your husband, which, that's important to me, but it's not my number one goal. That's a cultural expectation that potentially prevented me from pursuing what makes me feel most alive, because I was setting that expectation upon myself in my younger years and saying oh, maybe I don't know, am I reaching too high trying to think about running a business one day? And then, being too bold. Culturally, women are expected or taught to be a little more submissive. So, masking yourself in a way and trying to fit into a box, which it is not something that hindered me a lot. I've always been authentically me, but of course in the back of your mind as a woman, there are these things that kind of exist in our subconscious. So that's what I answered that question, but to be honest, it hasn't been a huge problem for me. And in what communities, groups, or environments do I feel a purposeful connection? And I answered in a group of free-minded and positive thinking women. So that is where I feel like I have the most growth in the conversations with those people. And those are the communities that I learn the most from. So that kind of tells yourself, like, who do you need to make more connections with and grow connections with? So, I just try to, as much as possible, as much as I can, just communicate with other free-minded and positive thinking women, because I don't gain anything from negativity, gossip. So I tend not to conversate with people of that mindset. In what ways am I willing to modify my current lifestyle routine or habits in order to connect or reconnect with aspects of myself and make connections with others? So I answered, I am willing to modify my current lifestyle routine or habits by being more fearless and purposefully connecting with like-minded women. I have a hard time with kind of like communication. I don't reach out to people a lot. I'm not someone that really seeks conversation. I don't even keep up with my friends that often. I have always been a person where, like, I don't really say much unless I have something to say. So, I don't know, but that's something that I'm trying to do more, is I'm trying to be more purposeful with my connections and, being more fearless, not thinking like, oh, are they going to think I'm weird if I just randomly send them a message? Like, you know what I mean? So I'm willing to kind of like modify that and be a little more outgoing. The last one, that was the last question. So after you've kind of answered those questions for yourself, I think that will give you a good beginning to kind of, discover yourself and kind of what your goals are and where that might lead you to your creative space. So the last part of this was asking what your mission is, and you can answer that a couple different ways. You could answer like, what is your mission in life, which is a really big question, but I kind of answered it as to what is my mission in my career. And I said my mission is to help others learn and understand and implement ways to elevate their self-care and cultivate a rhythm in that, which adds to the bigger picture of a higher self and inner peace. And this book really helps with understanding that and prioritizing your time and your own needs, how that will benefit other aspects of your life and help you achieve greatness. And just reclaiming your life by prioritizing your time and your creative space. So a big thought here is that we have 24 hours in a day, so what are you going to do with it? How you spend your days is literally how you spend your life. I read that quote maybe a year ago, and it really resonated with me because it's so true. We're always thinking like, oh, in 5 years, life will be like this. I'll be doing this. Next year, I'll start doing this. Why are you wasting that precious time? Why are you letting all that time pass until you get to where you want to be? Start spending your days now how you want to spend your life, because time is fleeting. And I'm just going to sharply move into the next part. She uses the term the 3 Ps, and this is kind of a separation of time that is a requirement throughout the day. So the 3 Ps are partner, parent, and professional. Your time as a partner is contributing to your relationship you choose to have, which is intimacy, social, love language. If you don't have a partner, obviously you don't have to use this as your time. You might replace this with time with your friends and just your loved ones in general, because you don't want to live a lonely life, and you still need to cultivate relationships. But the first P is partner. So if you are in a committed relationship, you obviously are expected to contribute to that relationship that you choose to have throughout the day. The second P is parent. If you have a child, even if you don't have a kid, if you have a pet, obviously that's another part that is going to take up time in your day that you're expected. So kids, playing, talking with your children, teaching them, having quality time. And then the third P is professional. So this is work, paid or unpaid. Household work, duties, as well as your job, if you gain a salary. So no matter what professional means to you, if you stay at home, then that is, you're expected to maybe like wash the dishes, pick up after the kid, just like there's things that are required of you throughout the day. So throughout the 3 Ps, those are things that are kind of like expected of you. And we can easily let one of those Ps take up way too much time. So we want to make sure that we're prioritizing that correctly and efficiently. If you're not careful, these tasks and duties can take up your whole day, like I said, which leads to frustration, anger, burnout, and other draining or negative emotions. That's why we have to manage our time among the day. I'm trying to read through my notebook. That's why we have to manage our time among these day to day expected duties, as well as prioritize our own time that too often gets neglected, especially among women, and even more, especially mothers. So if we're not managing our time among these, expected duties, then obviously time for ourselves is getting neglected. And I said especially women and mothers because I'll get more into that because that's pretty deep, but mothers put on a lot of expectations for ourselves, and we guilt ourselves. And you really need to share some of those duties if you have a partner, and realize that you're a person and you do require time for yourself. So I'll share with you later on what are some helpful ways that my husband and I found to share some of the household and parenting duties, so that I'm not, like I have historically, put most of those duties on myself. And men, they usually won't intervene. They women kind of like have in the minds of men, like they know what they're doing. And I've also heard, like, in a case of emergency, people aren't going to go to a man if there's like some kind of disaster or something going on. Like, people, or especially children, they're going to look for a woman. So I don't know, men might think like, oh, they run the household, so this is how they want it done. So you definitely have to ask of your partner. So the time that we need to prioritize aside from our expected duties is self-care and creative space. So aside from the 3 Ps, partner, parent, and professional, you also need to carve out time for self-care and creative space, which are 2 different things, and I did not know that until I read this book, actually. So time for self-care and a creative space are often seen as a luxury, but they're not. They're necessary for our mental well-being and operation as a person who attains a joyful life. If you don't have time for self-care in your day and a creative space, I don't see any way how you can have a joyful life. You're just going to get burnt out if you're just doing partner, parent, professional, like every single day. So a quote that I really liked from this book is, "You are complicit in your own oppression when you willingly put yourself and your time second or last." And this is something that I think a lot of women, and especially mothers, need to hear, because even if you don't think you are willingly putting yourself second or last by burning yourself out and being a giver all day long. You have to understand that it's not selfish to take that time for yourself. And yes, as a mother, especially of a young child or infant, it can be hard to find that space And there are going to be days where it might not be enough time that you really need, but you're complicit in your own oppression if you're not making the time. There's a lot of women that I know that their babies still sleep in bed with them. Their babies stay up till 10, 11 o'clock at night. And to me as a mother, that's unacceptable. The baby is not the one who makes the rules. You are. You're complicit in your oppression by allowing that to happen. And if you are a mother who has struggles with those issues, you might be listening to this and like rolling your eyes like you don't understand, like my baby's just, no, and this is not like parenting advice, but I mean, kind of, we don't give our child any type of sugar after dinner. So if you're doing that, that's going to allow your kid to stay up. If you don't set boundaries with your kid and start from an early age of them sleeping by themselves, after they're done breastfeeding or whatever, after they like technically don't need you anymore, if you don't put them in their own room, that's going to be the new normal for them. And it's going to make it even harder for you to allow yourself the time and peace of like having your own bed and setting those boundaries. So you definitely have to set those boundaries for yourself. And like I said, if you don't, you're complicit in your own oppression. And trust me, I'm a mother. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I know how hard it is. I remember when I was breastfeeding her and we bed shared for a little while, which is controversial, but we bed shared for a little while. And then after she was done breastfeeding and she was just into comfort feeding, I put her into her own room and I would have to wake up 5 times throughout the night and come back and nurse her back to sleep. And Jesus Christ, it was hard. But I did it because I didn't want to give in and release those boundaries that I was setting with her, because having the bed to myself for me and my husband was really important to me. It was important for my peace and my mental health. So sometimes you have to do the hard things. You have to go through the hard patches. You have to set a bedtime for your kid. And not just give in because sometimes that's the easier thing to do. So I just wanted to say that. There are a lot of people who make their life harder than it needs to be by not doing the hard things and setting boundaries. So real quick, we'll define the separation between self-care and your creative space. Self-care are things that you can do to nurture yourself mentally and physically. Self-care ranges from going to get a pedicure to performing your daily skincare routine, having a walk in nature, to drinking a cup of coffee or tea, even meditating or journaling. These are things that we must do, and the choice is yours on what that entails, but these are things that we owe ourselves, not because we deserve it, after a bad day or on a special occasion, but because we're human. We deserve and owe ourselves these things. And if you don't make a point to self-care, and you will self-sabotage yourself. And again, with women, especially mothers, I find too often that they come in to see me, they're very burnt out, and they say, I don't have time for a skincare routine. Yes, you do. You're just not prioritizing your time. And I'm not trying to be shameful. I'm not trying to guilt trip. It's hard in those early days when you have like a little baby. And I know even like in the very beginning when I was a fresh new mom, even me, I didn't allow myself the time. I took on, like it was my job to make sure she's fed every time. It's my job to, and it's not. It's the job of myself and my partner. So I had to understand that. And when you're a new mom, it takes a second to figure that out. But yeah, you can just figure out what you need to do for self-care and make sure that you're doing it so that you don't self-sabotage yourself and burn out. Another quote is, losing yourself for the sake of others is not a win. That's another thing that goes back to women and mothers. It's not a win to be a martyr. It's not a win to do all of the things that you have set and others have set an expectation for you to do. You're not going to get a medal for being mom of the year. You know what I mean? Like, don't lose yourself for the sake of others. You're more useful to the people in your life if you're happy. It's not honorable for a tree to wilt and shrink and disappear. It's not honorable for a woman to either. That's another quote that was really strong for me. Women aren't going to stop overgiving until you recognize the awards of being a martyr or the opposite of happiness. And that's kind of similar to what I said earlier. That's just, I don't know, the way our brains are built. We feel like we're supposed to give and overgive and be a martyr, but it really drains us of ourselves. And the awards of being the martyr are truly the opposite of happiness. There's this thing, actually, it's called human giver syndrome. And so it's a contagious false belief that you have a moral obligation to give every drop of your humanity, your time, attention, energy, love, and even your body in the support of others, no matter the cost to you. And again, like, that's something as a new mom that I was definitely experiencing human giver syndrome. So that's something that you have to recognize and change to really prioritize your time well. Our culture for so long, and even today, applauds women for our suffering for giving until the point of empty. And like I said, there's no award for that. Shrinking yourself for the sake of your family, it always feels like the easiest option, but the story always ends the same sad way, a rageful, exhausted mother. So once you realize that what the result of that is, I hope it clears up why self-care is important. Now we'll move into the creative space, or as the writer of the book Unicorn Space calls it, unicorn space. So unicorn space, or I'll just call it creative space, is redefined creativity. It's the pursuit of self-expression in any form based on curiosity and passions. This can be creating art, expanding knowledge in your area of expertise, something that piques your curiosity, or developing a new skill. Your creative space is that thing that makes you you. But like a unicorn, it doesn't exist unless you give it a place to. It shouldn't be thought of as an add-on to your current life, but essential and fundamental to your physical, emotional, and mental health. Like I was saying earlier in the episode, my creative space, I recognized that it was fundamental to my mental health. It allowed me to regulate. So that is how I already viewed it. But I didn't actually have the tools to carve out the necessary time for that daily. So your creative space is not a hobby, it's not a project or a distraction. It's an active and open pursuit of self-expression. I personally use art as a form of self-expression. I also like to read and educate myself on my area of expertise, which is skincare, and I like to listen to podcasts that cover topics of interest. So yeah, that's my unicorn space. Now, how you manage or balance time to fit all the needs into a 24-hour day, that's kind of unique to everyone. For my lifestyle, this is how it goes. And you have to think, like, how do you currently spend your days and what takes up your time currently? So, of course, we talked about the 3 Ps earlier: partner, parent, and professional. Oh, sorry about my microphone. So I have a husband, a dog, and a daughter, and a paid job. So these are all things that are already assumed time. And so now we balance it. Partner. In the morning, my husband often leaves before my daughter and I, so we're able to touch base and kind of run through the day, and I'll tell him bye. Maybe we'll have a cup of coffee together or something. And then, he goes off to work. Later in the day, when we kind of reconjoin, we're all at home, I'm able to sit with him at dinner. We can chat before dinner, maybe even make dinner together. Sometimes we all play together, myself, my husband, and my daughter. She really likes to role play, so we'll run around the house doing something silly. But we always rejoin at the end of the day after our daughter goes to bed. So that's how I kind of separate my time as a partner. We just kind of meet at 3 different points of the day and parent. In the morning, I have a routine with my daughter, and routine is super important when you have kids. Every morning, besides the weekends, my husband and I, we each take turns. I'm reading from my journal. So every morning, besides the weekends, on the weekends, so Saturday and Sunday, my husband and I take turns waking up with my daughter. But throughout the week, I will wake up with her. She's 3, so it's a great way to share responsibility, my husband and I, by letting each other sleep in either on Saturday or Sunday, whichever day we choose. So when I wake up with her throughout the week, or if it's my day on the weekend, we eat breakfast together and we watch cartoons first thing in the morning. And then once we're kind of settled in, we have got done eating, we'll get dressed, cleaned up, and sometimes we play before we leave for work and school. Some days I do have to rush, so we don't get to play before we go and get ready. But when she comes home from school, we often settle and get a snack, play, do some artwork or teaching. And then after dinner, my husband and I take turns with bath time. Again, that's another shared responsibility as a parent. And I know not everyone has a partner, so if you're a single parent, an established routine is going to be your best friend. So yeah, after my daughter goes to bed, I will usually decompress and pick up on any housework. Sometimes I do my housework in the morning if I have a later work schedule. And then my husband and I create a routine where we establish housework that we're each responsible for. And this has been within the past month or 2. So if you are the one at home while your partner does go in for a paid job, that shouldn't mean that you should be solely responsible for all the housework, because you're not the only one contributing to the cleanup. You need to establish communication and responsibility, and it will be easier if habits are made, such as organization, picking up after yourself, etc. We have a list. We have a dry erase board on the refrigerator, and we each, chose our own responsibilities. I'm responsible for all laundry, so even his laundry too, but he has to put his dirty clothes in the hamper. That's an expectation I have of him. I also clean the bathrooms and the floors, as well as picking up after our dog. And even though I'm responsible for these things, I do expect that he will pick up his towels. He won't leave trash on the floor if he produced it, etc. He's responsible for taking out the trash, feeding our dog, dishes, and making sure our daughter picks up her toys or sorting her toys. Now again, he expects me, I assume, to not pile more garbage into the overflowing trash can or leave dishes sitting around. In the short time that we have been implementing this, my stress level has lowered so much and our home is much more in order. And I did check in with and ask him, because he has never had structured housework before. I've always been the one that has assumed that responsibility. So I asked him, do you feel like you're taking on too much? And he said no. So don't expect that your partner is going to be pissed off, or your partner won't be able to do these things. He definitely chose his own chores. We each chose our own. So as long as we're keeping that communication open, everything is seeming to flow really well. Okay, so the duties that I just said, they fall into professional. Aside from housework, my work stops when I come home. I'm not bleeding my work into my off hours. It's important to establish permission within yourself to not let that take up your time, because again, that is going to kind of imbalance everything. We have these times for everything, and we need to try our best to set these boundaries. Give yourself permission to allow specific times for others. If a client calls me, I don't feel like an asshole for not answering and sending them to voicemail. I'm not on my hours. I'm not working. So you need to respect yourself. So now that we've covered how I manage my 3 Ps, partner, parent, and professional, where do I fit in my self-care and creative space? So after I just kind of lined out my whole day, that can seem like it's taken up a lot of time, but each of those things that I went through didn't take up too much time. So let's say our morning routine, that's the morning before we leave. We usually will leave at about 8 or 9. And then, I get into the professional. I go to work, my husband goes to work, and then we both get home. Say we get home at 4. Then we can play with our daughter for an hour. We're having a little bit of partner time between that, making dinner. After we eat dinner and everything, say it's 5:30 or 6, we have 3 hours before we have to, 3 hours before we're getting our daughter ready for bed. So, we're able to have a little bit more time as a partner and as a parent. And then after our daughter goes to bed, we have an hour or 2 before we go to bed, so we can set in that time for creative space or self-care. I definitely do self-care every day. And it is important to me to do a little bit of creative space every day. It doesn't have to take up a lot of time. It can take 30 minutes, and sometimes my husband's creative space is prioritized one day over mine, and then vice versa the next day. My creative space will be prioritized because, again, we're sharing responsibility with the parenting role. So that is something that you need to communicate with your partner, that maybe you each need a little bit more of dedicated time to pursue your creative space. So my self-care is established into a part of my daily routine. My AM skincare when I get up and get ready in the morning, so that's already part of my morning routine. And then my PM skincare at night, and any moments I get in between to, gain a moment of reflection. This can be 10 minutes of uninterrupted peace, laying in my bed, taking a bath, painting my nails, sitting outside. And so this is all stuff that I will do after dinner within that time frame before I have to get my daughter ready for bed. And that's not every day, but I would say probably 3 days out of the work week, I'll take that 10, 20 minutes of uninterrupted peace, for my own self-care. And then if my husband wants to take that too, then, he can take that too. We take turns. And I do get a greater space for self-care on the weekends, but I make sure there's established moments during the week also, because I'm prioritizing it. Unicorn space, or creative space. My husband and I both take some time for this after our daughter's bedtime, like I already mentioned. His is usually playing on his computer with his friends, and mine is watching a new favorite show, or creating some type of art, or even researching, my area of expertise. In each of our free time, we do like to hike, which feeds partner, parent, and unicorn space, actually. So on the weekends, sometimes we'll do that, but we also have our individual interests. His is guns and his truck, and mine is decorating, thrifting, gardening, art, reading, etc. It is important to me that our daughter also has her creative space, even though she's 3. We give her tools to help her with her creative endeavors as well. She really likes art and, building things. And so a new frame of mind is yours when you commit to reframing how you value your time and intentionally reprioritize uninterrupted time for you. And I have done that recently, and I will say, yes, a new frame of mind has been established now that I have reframed the value of my time and intentionally reprioritized the time for my own creative space. And if you feel guilt for taking time for yourself, you need to ask yourself, without the guilt and shame that you feel, how might taking your own time make you feel? So if you don't feel the guilt and shame and you did the thing, you went and took a bubble bath or you ran to the thrift store, how would you feel from doing that? You would probably feel at peace. You would feel joy? You feel like a breath of fresh air? Would you feel proud, accomplished, fulfilled, gratified, content, delighted? So when you use your voice to assert your right to a more creative life, it's essential using your voice to assert your right to a more creative life is essential, and how you voice it is key. A lot of people are afraid to voice and assert their right to a creative life because, again, they might feel guilt for it. But set the guilt aside and think, how will you feel by doing this? The answer is probably always going to be a positive. By doing things you like to do, running to the thrift store, you're not abandoning your family. You're not abandoning your kids. You're taking a small piece of time from your day to refill your cup so you can be a better parent, better partner. And so what you need to do is you need to communicate effectively with your partner and take equal time for your own endeavors. If speaking to your spouse, the person with whom you have a problem, isn't a tool in your toolbox, it definitely needs to be. So if you want something you've never had before, you have to do something you've never done before in order to get it. So if you feel like your partner is not giving, you need to go to couples therapy, or at least have a conversation, a conducive conversation where you can use your voice and you can both be understood, and you can find out what you need to do to run a happy household and live a joyful life. For partners, working as a team to create space for one another is imperative. It's imperative that you communicate and collaborate versus playing the game of he or she took 4 hours this Sunday to go spend time with their friends. That's 4 hours I'm stuck at home with our kids. So instead of that mindset, you can collaborate on each of your creative times to avoid resentment. And that's something I've seen with a lot of people. So know that you'll have your time and be happy. You'll have your time too, and just be happy that your partner is also able to fill their cup. So, but that's the thing. That's where the resentment comes in, because one of the partners are not using their voice to say, hey, I need this too. Why don't we collaborate? And you have time this weekend, I'll have time next weekend. And then there's the resentment because you're not communicating and collaborating. So you need to establish a why. You need to build time into your daily or weekly schedule that is valuable to you because blank. So I build time into my daily or weekly schedule to do artwork, and that can be graphic design, that can be sketching in my sketchbook, and it's valuable to me because it allows me to decompress and just express my creativity without, it allows me to just free flow and not have these thoughts. It's just, it's something that I enjoy to do. And so how do you feel when you do it? And how would you feel if you didn't do it? So whenever I'm creating artwork, I feel like I am exercising these ideas. I have a lot of ideas going on in my head. And so when I get to exercise them, it gives me a gratification. And then also it just makes me feel like I'm able to translate whatever I'm feeling into artwork. And if I didn't do it, I would feel probably bored, I guess. So that's just one of the things that I like to do. What we can do to remove distractions and create a creative, that sounds funny. So what we can do to remove distractions and make a creative and curious space for ourselves is to put the phone away. That's something that I had to realize. Social media is such a time stealer. I can get stuck into TikTok, and before you know it, an hour has gone by. So put your phone away and think, what activity gets you excited? What makes you feel most like you? And so I like to gain knowledge on my special, area of interest or expertise. So I will do some research into skincare products or, different things like that. or like I said, artwork, or so you may be thinking, creativity, it just doesn't come to me. I'm a practical type A. I've heard a lot of people say that. So let's reframe that question. If you're unsure what your creative space looks like, so you just need to be more curious. So curiosity, what is it? So it starts with an itch to explore. And it doesn't matter what type of person you are, all men by nature desire to know. So get curious. Curiosity is like a hunger. It can lead us to some strange new places. Don't be ashamed of your curiosity. I think a lot of people limit their curiosities for some reason unknown, but we can define creativity differently. It can be led by curiosity rather than passion or art alone. And my creative space is curiosity and art, passion. I do like to express myself artistically, but it doesn't have to be that. It's not just limited to the making of visual art or creative writing. It's also developing a new skill, expanding your knowledge within your expertise, and learning of advancements in your field of interest. So my creative spaces are artwork, thrifting, gardening, decorating, hiking. And something cool that you can do is write down a list of your different interests and curiosities like I just did, and then you can kind of combine them together. So it was some cool ideas. It's nothing I've done before, but so art and thrifting. So I wrote down making art out of thrifted items. That could be a really cool creative space. Or propagating with thrifted planters. So thrifting and gardening. I like to propagate my plants. It was something I'm trying to learn to do, trying to get a new skill set. So just finding different potential unique planters at the thrift store and using those, I think, could be cool. And another weird little idea, I put hiking and gardening. So planting on hikes, propagating natural plants. There's a lot of succulents here in Arizona, so it would be kind of cool to do that. So now that's a lot of information, a lot of stuff, but if you haven't identified your creative space, I really hope that some of those tools have helped you realize that creative space doesn't have to be, conventional creativity by making visual art or, things like that. It can be whatever piques your interest, whatever you are curious about. If you're curious about astrology, just learning about astrology is your creative space. Anything that has to do with whatever your curiosity is. And I think in today's age, prioritizing time is something we definitely struggle with because we are so, what's the word I'm looking for? We're so within reach. Our cell phones are always on us. We're always available. We don't ever turn off. We're so accessible. That's the word I'm looking for. Turn off your accessibility and reserve that time for yourself. And then carve out the time in your day for things that you must do, and don't let them bleed into your personal time. Communicate with your partner. And I was actually last night or the night before, I was sitting there cooking dinner and I was just looking out the window and I was like, I am so happy right now. Everything that I'm doing, everything that I have, my practices, I could not envision a better self for me at this moment in my life because I'm actively taking the steps to make this happen, and I'm so proud of myself. In the past, there were so many things that I wanted to do. We finally have a house with a covered patio and a fenced-in backyard, and it has freaking grass. When we were in Colorado, our backyard did not have any grass. It was horrible. I hated it. And I always thought, I can't wait until I move in to a house that has grass. I'm going to do all these different things. I'm going to plant flowers. I'm going to sit on my patio and eat dinner out there if it's nice. And then when I moved out here, I wasn't taking the time and making the actions to allow myself to do those things But once I made that list with my husband and shared responsibilities and reprioritized my time, it's much easier for me to do those things that are fulfilling. So now that I've actually been living life on my terms and allowing myself to live life the way I want to without guilt or shame and without, just letting housework take up my whole day, because now I've shared the responsibility with my husband. So yeah, I'm allowed to have more peace in my life. And I hope that maybe after this episode, some of you can too. And like I already said before, I've always been a creative person, but I guess there's more intention with my creativity now, because I am actually prioritizing this more intentional time for it. And instead of having all these ideas like, oh man, I'd love to do this one day, I have this idea and then I actually make it happen. That's the beauty of it, is actually making it happen instead of just like dreaming about it, I guess. And you might be in a space in your life where you're limited, like you don't have a partner to share, parenting time or household duties. But if you structure your time and create routine, you'll make it easier on yourself. And then also, like, it doesn't always have to cost you money to invest in a creative space. Creative space can purely just be time. It can be researching your curiosities. So yeah, that's something I like to do. And yeah, sometimes, like, if your creative space is artwork, like, yeah, it costs money to buy paint and the canvas and stuff like that. So I don't necessarily do that a lot. I just get a sketchbook and, I'll just sketch in it. And it's actually a little more fulfilling to me when I do artwork for it to be like intentional art. So it's not really as gratifying for me to just like sketch in a sketchbook and then it be something that I'm going to throw away later. I like it to be something that I can be proud of. So I've actually made it more of a intention to create more intentional art, I guess. So I'm not just like recycling through canvases, but I'm actually, I'll get a canvas and then I'll work on it. I'll take my time. I'll work on it little by little until, I've used that creative space for maybe 2 weeks. And then I have a piece of artwork that I'm proud of. But yeah, my biggest takeaway from this episode is I want people to be open to or learning how to reprioritize your time differently, so that you're able to do the things you want to do past the 3 Ps, such as self-care and your creative space, and allowing you to find what your creative space might be. As always, thank you guys so much for listening, and I really hope it didn't sound like I was rambling. Sometimes whenever I'm talking on a topic that I feel I'm passionate about, I don't know, I feel like I'm rambling until I listen back to the episode. So hopefully some of this was useful for you, or at the least entertaining, and I will see you next Monday, 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, for another episode.